Hi, I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing. If you haven't already done so, please visit ProRelevant.com and sign up for more of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of my just released book, The Post-COVID Marketing Machine: Prepare Your Team to Win. You can find out more information on this at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today, we'll be speaking with Atiba de Souza. Welcome, Atiba.
Hey, Guy, thank you so much for being here. And man, what a great title for a book.
Thank you.
Absolutely genius.
Well, it's funny when we were doing it, we did some social media and we did a handful of polls on it, and during when and this was in the middle of COVID, and so everybody really liked it. Now that we're kind of post COVID, truly, then it's kind of like, well, I don't know, but I think it's good. I think it'll do well. So yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your backstory on getting into marketing?
Well, my backstory goes way beyond COVID, so that's for sure, right? But I actually started off in 1996 building my very own search engine. Me and two friends sat in my mother's basement, which, believe it or not, y'all, my mother's moving out of that house right now as we speak, as we record this. And we sat in that basement and we wrote a search engine because it was a cool thing to do and we thought we needed it. And that started me in search. Okay, way back in 1996. Then I went over to the government and did search for the government, and then got tired of the government. It's kind of tough working with the government, and then went back into the private sector. And at that time, which was right around 2005, 2006 timeframe, I was looking at Google and the search results it was providing and what people were saying about those results. And I realized Google had a problem. And at that time, Google was also realizing it was having a problem, right? It was returning search results that people weren't happy with. And there were people, business owners, who had really great content, even back then, who could not get their content in front of their right customer. And being an old geek who wrote search engines, I was like, well, I know how it works. And I think we can figure out how to get your content to the top of page one of Google. I think we can do that. And that started me in at least search marketing.
Right, right. Yeah, fantastic. And that is so true. Google. I mean, who knew back then how important a search engine is, and now with our clients, paid search and organic search are just about everything to their businesses. And
Absolutely.
if you're not successful in those, then your business is missing out. It's missing out on opportunity. So tell us about your business, Client Attraction Pros. Tell us about that.
So, as you said, organic, right, and search. And so that's where we started, right around that time, 2006, and really got going 2007, 2008, and saw the market and what we can do. So we did a lot of trials in those first couple of years. And then about 2008 when we really got started. And it was all about written content, blogs. That's what we had back then. Okay. That's what everybody had. And that's what people still have. And we were helping our clients produce fantastic written content, whether it was just their copy on their website or more often or not, blog posts and blog content. And we did that really up until 2018, 2019. And about 2018 and really inside of 2019, I was tired. We went on vacation at the end of 2019, my wife and I, and she said she wanted to get her business really going. I said, great, because I'm getting tired of written content. And I've been doing this a long time. Maybe it's time for a change. And at that time as well, I had written really a spec in 2018 about video, and that video was the future, right? It was becoming harder and harder and harder to rank for written content, and video content was really starting to pick up steam. And as I was saying to her, I think I'm done. Then, well, we all know what happened after 2019, right?
Yep.
Um, and when COVID hit in early 2020, I said, well, maybe this is good timing then, because a lot of my clients started saying, hold on, we're not sure what we want to do. We're not sure if we want to keep spending money. We're going to pump our brakes a bit. And so I started thinking, this might be a good time. But then something else happened on the other side. Bunches and bunches of people who I'd said for literally a decade, you need a web presence and you need SEO, started showing up and knocking on the door saying, hey, we need help. We need to get online, or we're online, but our online sucks. Can you help? Can you help? Can we help? And it forced me into this juxtaposition of, okay, how can I really help you? What is it that I can really do here for you? Because the other thing that COVID did, for any of you who don't know listening, is it made a bunch of people who, and I'm not saying this to be disparaging to them, but who took a course and then started a Facebook account, ad account, and ran ads and said, I know everything about SEO. I know everything about paid search because I took a course. Right. And so, and you know this guy. And so people were just inundated, but they didn't know who to trust. And it became even harder to rank on page one because there was even more content being created that sucked. And so I said, okay, what are we going to do with this? And how are we going to help? And it was about that time I met somebody who's a really close friend of mine now, Uzair from the UK. And he was like, man, I've been doing this YouTube thing, and I've been doing this since like 2016, and here's my results now. And it reminded me of that spec that I'd written way back in 2018. Okay. And I pulled it up and I said, hold on. This is actually really close to what he's doing. And he was having some issues with just the written SEO. And so we started collaborating on some stuff, and his stuff has skyrocketed. You should go check him out, SF Digital. Absolutely wonderful in this space. And what I learned there, though, was that there was a way that we could help people create videos using the same concept of spec in terms of content that we use with written content, create videos, and then get those videos ranked on page one of Google. If you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Give you a quick example of this. And listen to me, y'all. I'm not saying that these results are typical and always, but this just happened last week. We had a client. He's been struggling for several years to get anything he's done ranked on page one of Google. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we were able to help get 14 out of 18 videos ranked on page one, and 8 of them in spot number one.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. So, and you're talking about page one of YouTube as opposed to page one of Google.
No, I'm talking about page one of Google.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Page one of Google. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do want to talk to you a little bit more about that. But one of the things on your LinkedIn page, I saw a couple of really good videos on there. And, you know, and I really liked what you did in terms of, you know, your customer value journey and the key. And I think you called it the key to good content. Tell us about that. And then we'll get into some of the YouTube stuff, because I thought that was pretty impressive.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And so this is what we figured out back in 2005 to 2008, and we've used to help written content rank, and we then took it to video content. And that is the problem that Google has, and the problem that Google is trying to solve, is it wants to answer people's questions. Google has been spent really the last 20 years trying to figure out, how do I take what you type in, figure out exactly what you mean, exactly what your question is, and then give you an answer that exactly fits your question. In 2017, they came as close as they've ever come, and they keep getting closer and closer and closer every single year. The challenge that they've had, though, is even though they're getting better at figuring out what we call user intent or searchers' intent behind what they typed in, the results aren't getting any better. So what we do is very simple. We figure out what real questions, what questions real people are asking. Said that backwards. What questions real people are asking. What are people really asking Google? And then how does Google interpret the intent? And then does that intent match who you are as a business owner and what your business is all about? If it does, let's create video content for that. And so we map that to the customer value journey, in that it's important to understand, before you buy anything, there's a journey that you go through with that brand. There's a journey. There's a process that you go through. Sometimes the process is really short. Look, I need toothpaste. Okay, I'm going to go to the store, buy toothpaste. What was my journey with that? Well, my journey was I went to the store. It was on sale. I buy what's on sale. That was the journey. Lowest price one. Journey. Right? My journey could have been, I saw my mom using this toothpaste. There's always a journey. In everything that you purchase, buy a car, there's a journey that you go through. The businesses that can master that journey, can understand that journey, and then create content to help the buyer along that journey, is going to win every single time. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, one thing too, in my book, Post-COVID Marketing Machine, and actually the last 2 or 3 books, one of the things that I talk about is you have to understand how a consumer makes a purchase decision, and you've now widened that out even further, which I really like is how that consumer then takes that journey to go from, you know, I want to buy a couch or whatever it is, or a car or whatever it is, and then how do they follow that journey all the way then to the final purchase. And I like what you're saying is that the content that you put out has to feed into the different steps along that journey. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. And we did start doing that 2005, 2008. Then Google, and this is when we really knew we were onto something. Google came out and then said, it's the way to go in 2011. Okay. So in marketing, in the history of marketing, we go all the way back to the 60s. There was this concept of moment of truth marketing, right? And the moment of truth marketing was, hey, there are these moments that you've got to master with yada, yada, yada in order to make the sale, right? And in 2011, Google published a spec, and it's still out there. You can go to Google this, 0 moment of truth marketing. And Google said, hey, I think people need to start to realize that there are moments of truth that happen before the customer ever calls you. And that's true because they can come to us and search.
Right.
And if they come to us and search, then the answers that they find create moments of truth. I'm going to back that up too with a study that was done, and forgive me, y'all, because I forget. It was either Princeton or Yale that did this study, and I forget which one it was, but it was one of the Ivies. And here was the study. It was absolutely astounding. It said that people are more than 90% likely to blindly follow the first person that taught them something about a topic. Just think about that.
That is very true. That is very true. That is, and I know I'm guilty of that as well. Absolutely.
We all are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's then kind of like the value of influencers. If an influencer in whatever fashion then really comes out and has something that you can learn from, and if you as your brand or that influencer in teaching, then that makes a huge difference.
Yes. Yes. And so being that brand and the one that teaches about your topic is even more important in
Yeah.
the post-COVID marketing machine.
To your point about the customer journey and the customer value journey, which I like, is how do you influence those zero moments of truth to points that you may not even be aware of?
Yes.
Because especially
Yes.
for what I call high consideration products, typically products that are that are more expensive or have a big impact on yourself or on your business, you're going to be trying to learn about them way before you actually start to seriously consider your purchase.
Yes.
And I know I'm definitely guilty of that. I'll start thinking about something today, and then maybe a month or two from now, I'll finally pull the trigger and say, okay, I'm now going to really seriously do something and buy it within the next couple of hours. And
Yep.
if I'm a brand and I am not involved in that activity now, very early on, then
You
I'm not
lose
even going
out.
to be part of the journey throughout the whole thing.
You lose out. And so this is the key. So guys, that's a great question. Okay. It's an absolutely great question. And that's what we do for our clients is we help them figure that out. Right. So yes, everybody sees the videos and everybody wants to talk about, yes, but the real crux of it all is we've got to figure out what those questions are. And in figuring out what those questions are, the thing that you have to consider is every solution creates a new problem. Every solution creates a new problem. So when you went from living in an apartment to buying your first house, you solved the problem. You no longer have to pay rent. Okay, now you have a mortgage, but you no longer have to pay rent. Well, what's the problem that it also created? Well, now you also have to pay for trash. Now you also have to get your lawn cut, right? So if you're a lawn care company, you know there are people who are going to have a problem after they buy a house. So who do I need to communicate with? So that's one thing, is understanding where you fit in the life of your customer and asking what was the problem that they had right before mine. Something caused them to have the problem that I solve. What was that? Let's go figure that out. Because if we can educate to the end of that process, or even through some of that process, then again, going back to that study, we're the ones who educated them. When they when they have a need later, they'll blindly trust me. Here's a case study for this. I have a client that's a caterer, okay, and they primarily do weddings, large weddings. Most of their weddings are minimum 20,000, so you're talking $20,000 to $60,000 just for the food service, not for the whole event, right? Large weddings, okay, and obviously that's a very tailored type of couple. It's not every couple, and they were in a place where every couple was coming to them and they were wasting a lot of time talking to a lot of couples who had no business ever using their service, right? So, okay, what's the problem that they have right before they get to you? Well, they've got to choose a venue before they get to me. So we created content for them around educating about the venues that they work at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yep. Makes us total sense. And to your point, you would call those life stages or life moments. We work with a furniture company, and exactly to your example, when somebody's going to change from living in an apartment to moving into a home, just like you said, they need the lawn cut, they need to sign up for electricity and gas and whatever,
Yep.
but they also need new furniture.
Absolutely.
I mean, typically the house, when you move from an apartment to a house, it's going to be bigger. You need more furniture, and if you're in that early process, that is exactly where you as a brand want to be. And then I do like your story about that Ivy research. Will have to give me the link on that, because that's we'll post that with that, because that I really like what that means in terms of being the first it's not, it's always interesting, the fear of missing out. Well, this is the opportunity to miss in. Do you want to
Yes,
be in there, right there?
yes, yes, absolutely. And it's so very important, right? And
Yeah.
that's the so if you're listening, that those are the things you have to really consider. Now, to your next side of the question is, okay, so I've figured out where they were before they got to me, and maybe I've educated or maybe I've talked to them, but now how do I? It's still like I just bought a Remarkable. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I have been looking at a Remarkable for a year and a half. So how do you communicate with somebody for a year and a half?
Mm.
What's going on there for a year and a half, right? So one, that's a lot of what we do with the data analytics and the research that we do to figure out the questions that they're asking along that year and a half journey that you need to answer to keep them in your value journey until they're ready to actually make a purchase. But then here's the second thing that so many people miss. It's voice of customer research. Ask your current customers.
Mm.
Just ask them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't learn more than, I mean, they are the fount of all information. And if
Yes,
you're not doing that, you are so right. You are so right.
yes, yes. So you gotta ask your current customers, have those surveys. And so many people are afraid to have those types of surveys. And I know, I'll admit, I've been in business a long time. I've owned multiple types of businesses and I've been there too. And every single time that I've done it, I've been so very thankful that I did.
Well, let me tell you a short story as
Please.
well. Even on my post-COVID marketing machine, I
Mhm.
had the concept more or less down, and you wanted to refine it. Well, instead of just going off and writing and researching online, I went off and did 25 customer interviews
Brilliant.
and get their case studies and then write up those case studies and understand how each one of those fits into how you build a marketing machine. And I don't know about you, when I was younger, I was afraid to talk to customers. Oh my God, they're going to give me some negative feedback or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
And now I want that negative feedback because I need to learn,
So
what
how are
I'm
you going to
doing
learn?
wrong.
Yeah.
And then to your point is, how do you learn what their customer journey was, their customer value journey was 6 months or 12 months before they made that decision
Yes.
to start the search. And that great point. I really, really like that.
Yes. And so let me, since you went there, let me give for everyone listening the advance point, because this is the other thing that we do. Okay. Um, we had a customer, whoever the customer was, whatever we delivered for them, and it was successful. And even if it wasn't successful, really, but we're done. Engagement is done. I then have a staff member go back through all communication and audit all communication and look for what questions did they ask along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? We take all
Yep.
of those and then we create content from those. Sometimes
Interesting.
that content becomes like, let's be real, especially if you're selling high value, high ticket stuff, your sales cycles are longer. You may send a proposal and you may not hear from somebody for 3 months. That's real, right? And so what do you communicate with them in that time frame? The answers to all the questions all your other customers have already asked. Because guess what? They got them the same questions too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that, and you're so right. And when we do a proposal or we are presenting our proposal or whatever, we very carefully, just like you're talking about, write down exactly what those questions are,
Mm-hmm.
and actually use those words in the next round or in the next meeting. So when they say, something like, "Hey, I want to, improve my overall marketing effectiveness, and we want to do it with word ABC," we absolutely make sure that word ABC
ABC.
is in the next conversation that we use.
Yes.
And so important. That is so important.
Yes. 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 And so the study was Milgram's It's called the Milgram experiment. While you were talking, I was looking it up. I knew
Okay.
where I had it in my notes because it used to, the funny story, y'all, it used to be on our old website.
Mhm.
And when we redid it, we actually took it off because people were reading it. But you know, we found it interesting. Most people didn't. So hey, again,
Yeah.
it's about what your customers want. What let me touch that point. When we're talking about the value journey, so many of us get stuck in talking about what we want versus what they want.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
guilty of it. I'm telling you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And this Milgram's experiment was one of those things. We love it, but nobody ever read it.
Mm.
So we took it off.
Yep. Yep. Well, and it's so and it makes so much sense, but you are so right though, quite often. And I think you know, it's often, you know, founders bias or entrepreneurs bias. It's you know, we do as we, and I'm guilty of it. You try not to, but you put those blinders on and you say, you know, I heard what you say, but I heard, you know, I think you mean this. And in reality, no, no, no. They said this for a reason, and that reason is then what's going to get you to the next level in whatever it is you're trying to do with your clients.
Yeah. So let me share this with you. And this is a friend of mine, Christina Hooper, um, brilliant marketer as well, by the way. Just taught me recently this framework for that to help us as entrepreneurs. You ready for this? Get this. Give them what they want, give them what they need, and then give them what they want again. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
and so she framed it. I was like, okay, yes, that's what they wanted. And so we're going to give them what they want. We're going to give them, and she does this in a presentation framework. So she's telling you how to present. She's teaching you how to present, right? So they came to your presentation to learn this big thing because they want to slay this big dragon, whatever it is, right? So you give them that up front. But you and I both know that in order to get there, you got to go through blah, 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 to get there, right? They don't care about that, but they absolutely need to know it. And
Mm-hmm.
most of us as business owners, we say, oh, I know you want to do that, but first you got to go through, and we lose them
Yes.
because they don't want to hear that,
Yep. Yep.
right? And so she said, so instead, do the presentation in a way where you give them exactly what they asked for, give them all the bells and whistles, take them to the end and give them the victory. And then say, okay, that's the victory. Now, let me tell you the story of how we got to the victory. Blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you say, and when you do all of this, then the next thing is, here comes the big moment where you're going to get the victory. And you
Yeah.
end on the victory.
Yeah. No, that is so true. And I think you know, you have to sell exactly what they want, because that is what they're wanting to buy. Now, of course, there's other, just like you said, there's other obstacles or costs or steps or whatever it
Yep.
is that has to
Yep.
be done. But if you really say this is what you want, you know, if they tell you this is what you want and you're answering what they want,
Yep.
then how you get there is totally secondary. They just
Yeah.
want to, they know what they want, and you just have to answer that. I really like that. Very good analogy with what was it? Tell them what you want, tell them what you need, and then tell them what you
Yeah.
want again.
So give them what they want, tell them what
Give.
they need, and give them what they want again.
Yeah. 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 Very good. Very good. So, so we talked about the customer value journey. You also had a notion in your LinkedIn videos. You had something called a customer avatar. What did you mean by
Yeah.
that?
Okay. So this is the next piece. So we've talked about these questions, and the next question, the next logical question that you should be asking me, right? Because we said, okay, find out where they were before, but then ask your current customers. But the next logical question you should be asking me is, okay, but who are my actual customers? Like when you say think about where they were before, how do I know exactly where they were before? Because is it anybody buying a house? Going back to the furniture example, right? Is it anybody buying a house? Or is it anybody, going back to the catering example, anybody who's looking at a venue? No, it's not, because if they're in a rinky-dink venue that was $10, they're not affording your $20,000 wedding. If they're buying a house that's only 200 square feet bigger than their apartment, then they're probably not what you're looking for either, right? And so the avatar gives you the ability to do the first thing. And there are three keys to traffic. And then go there for a moment. But there are three keys to traffic. If you really want to generate organic traffic, there are three keys. And the first key is being completely and utterly obsessed with your audience. One of the ways to get there is by building a customer avatar. The avatar is a real person, in so much that it's on paper. But you need to think about it as a real person. We talk to our avatar. We name our avatar. When we have meetings, we talk about the avatar as a real person. Well, how would Maxine respond to this when we do it? The avatar grows. As you interview your customers and you learn more, you build more of your avatar. The avatar is your ideal, perfect customer. They're not every customer. They're the customer that you want to wake up and serve every single day. Because be real with me, you know there's some customers you'd rather stay in bed than to serve. Let's be real. Right? But this avatar is the one who's going to make you jump up and say, I'm ready to serve you today because I love working with you. But the only way you're going to get to know that avatar is you got to be obsessed. You have to create them as a person, give them a personality, learn about them. Where did they go to school? What type of work do they do? How much money do they have? What do they what do they do on a Friday night? When you know you have your avatar correct is when you're having conversations with your clients and you keep getting the feedback. I feel like you're in my head. How did you know that? Yes, you're speaking my language. Yes. Those are the moments when you start to realize, yes, I'm dialing into who my avatar is. I know you. What motivates you? What are you afraid of? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes them get up out of bed? And then finally, as it relates to your product and service, there's a before state that they exist in right now that they don't want to be in. And there's an after state after they've experienced you and your brand. You need to clearly define the before state and clearly define the after state. That, my friend, is your avatar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like that. We call that a gap analysis. Basically, it's where they are today, where they want to be. And then the second piece of that is, well, how much is that worth? And, you know, how much are they willing to invest to get from where they are today and the pain that they're suffering today to the promised land, which is, you know, on the other side of that gap. Absolutely. That makes so much sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So here we are. We're in 2019. We're rolling along real well, and then big whoops, pandemic hits, and so what happened? How did that affect what you're doing? How did that affect what your clients and customers are doing? So that you now were able to respond and be able to really help them to take advantage of, in some ways, the disaster called COVID.
Right. So for me, at first, it was almost a blessing in disguise because I was thinking maybe it was time to leave the industry and go a different route. Maybe it was time my wife wanted to build her business. Like, you know, maybe I'll just take a back seat and kind of do her marketing and be done with it, right? And that's kind of where I was. And then COVID hits, hadn't quite made the transition or the decision to transition yet. And then clients started freaking out, right? We had a couple who didn't, who buckled down and said, okay, this is a great opportunity. Let's figure out how we can get better. But most of them started freaking out and saying, well, we don't know if we want to spend and we don't know. And then the team started to scatter. Okay. Because writers all of our writers were freelance, were just losing their minds. because all of their clients were starting to scatter. And so it became harder. And really, about July of 2020, my top writers were all gone.
Mm.
You know, the ones who were rock solid. I'm like, yeah, been with me for a long time. Awesome. They all had to make lifestyle changes given what was going on and where life was going. Right. Especially since most of my writers were stay-at-home moms. And now they have spouses whose income is being jeopardized because of COVID. They're like, I got to do something different. I got to, yes. And that's again around the time when I started, when I'd already met you there, because I met you there in like March or so. I started thinking again about this whole video thing and saying, well, maybe video. And we started doing some research and started trying some things out and started seeing some things that were working and started realizing that what we've been doing, we could translate over to video very, very well, which is answering specific questions, helping customers answer specific questions. And the question was, could we get our current client base to come over with us? Short answer, no. By and large, the answer was no. For some of them, it was too early, still in COVID. For others, you know, we were a lot of times dealing with people who are extremely busy and said they didn't have enough time to even help us with the written content, and so that it felt like, especially in the early days, it felt like it was going to be too much work for them. Which again, folks, listening to customers. And so one of the things that we've solved for is, yeah, we create quality content for you, and I only need you 2 hours a month. I actually need my clients less time now than I did when we were doing written content. To do video content, we need less from you, because we heard when we had that exodus of clients who were like, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much. We're like, okay, if we're going to do this thing, we got to figure out that it's too much and it's too hard and it's going to take too long problem, which we did. Which we absolutely did. It's easy, it's fun, and it's painless now. And people actually tell us how much they enjoy it. Right? Which is absolutely amazing, because who the heck likes to be on camera? Not most of us.
Well, I always say I have a face for radio, so but yeah, absolutely. And interesting though that what you said is interesting, that the writing component actually went down when you shifted over to media.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening for us there too was, by 2021 we had made the commitment that we were going video, and at the time we were even coining the term, we were going to be a video first content marketing agency. Like, we're going video first, right? Not that we don't do written content, but our written content is based on video. Okay, that was first shot. And so I had to make the very, very hard choice in 2021 to say to the rest of the clients, who were still paying, by the way, right, who were still around. They said they weren't going to come, but they still, you know, we still had some really big clients paying north of 6 figures to say, hey, I know last year I said either we're going to go video or not. And a lot of smaller guys went, we kept y'all because y'all were big, because we weren't dumb. But now I'm going to be dumb. I'm going to understand. Either you come to video or the relationship ends. And we lost clients.
Well, that is a hard thing to do for a small business, or for any business.
Well, think of it this way. Like I said, we lost 6-figure clients and dropped our income down to under 10 grand a month. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough, but it was the right thing to do, is what we needed to do.
Mm,
We had to do. Otherwise, we would have always still been on that other side, and we would have never made the,
right,
the full switch over, the
right.
full commitment, right? And so we had to say goodbye. It was hard.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, sometimes you have to do cold turkey on that. That is a tough decision for anybody, that's for sure.
yeah.
So what do you see now as the biggest challenges facing your clients as they're now shifted or have shifted over to video? What do you see as the next big challenge for them? Or are we going to be inundated with video? Is that now what's going to happen?
Video is the future. Video is the present, and video is definitely the future. Now, video is the future for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, there is no better way to connect with another human being outside of being physically in their presence than video. No words on the page can do it. No audio can do it. No slideshow can do it.
Mm,
But I can sit here on video and look you dead in your eye, even though we're not together. And you can feel my heart. You can feel my reality. You can feel my sincerity as we sit here and communicate. And so video is absolutely 100% the future, and the future of marketing at that.
mm.
Okay. It's absolutely the future of marketing. Now, video is going to be changing. What do I mean by that? When we started, and so this is now 2020, late 2020, and we started talking to people about this, people started saying, okay, I remember the very first person, or one of the very first people to say this to me. All right, so we're going to do video, and you guys are going to be able to make it look like a Super Bowl commercial, right? It's like, well, number one, you don't have a Super Bowl commercial budget, so no. Right? But now the question, get this. Now the question. So this was late 2020, right? Now, late 2022, the question that I get all the time is, so is it going to look like a TikTok? Because that's what I want. There's a vast difference between a Super Bowl commercial and a TikTok video.
Yes.
But it speaks to the shift that has happened post-COVID and where the marketing machine needs to go. And that is, people want real, want authenticity. And the TikTok video, even though they're becoming really good at being professionally unprofessional, that's the point of them. Okay, and I'm not saying that we're trying to create TikTok videos either. What we're trying to do is help you, the brand, be you on camera.
Yeah. Well, I've been so amazed about how TikTok and Instagram Reels and then YouTube Shorts have just exploded. A friend of mine, he's been on there for a while now, and I, in the hundreds of thousands of downloads and views. It's just it's really incredible. And how can you otherwise get that kind of exposure with the message that you want? And to your point about being authentic, that really does allow you, video does allow you to actually see the person. It's not just marketing speak. You're seeing the person to see what, and look in their eyes, to your point, and be able to really see and get that all of those visual cues in terms of what they're saying and what they're showing and what they're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
So do you see regular YouTube videos that are longer than, let's say, 60 seconds or a couple of minutes? Do you see those continuing, or do you see everything really getting down to the 30 to 60 second time size?
So that's a really, really great question. And one of the things I learned early in business is, when you're small and you don't have big budgets, look to those who are big and have big budgets and are trying to do or answer the same questions that you are, and figure out what they're doing. Because if they're doing it They didn't do it accidentally. They spent a lot of money to figure out or to believe that that's the right answer. Okay. So let me answer your question in this way. Little less than a month ago, YouTube released a new feature where a short video on YouTube now has a very highlighted button at the bottom of the video that you can click on that takes you to the long form version of that video.
Mm.
So Google is telling us, Google is flat out telling us where they see the world going is that shorts will lead to someone wanting to consume more information from you. In other words, that shorts are going to help people move along your customer value journey.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that actually is an advantage, I would guess, over TikTok. I don't know if Instagram has that same capability, but that would be an advantage over both of those, because as an advertiser, as a marketer, as a brand, we want them to engage longer, and
Yes.
getting a 30-second or a 45-second engagement with a button to do several minutes or even a half an hour or whatever it happens to be, then that is, for the advertiser anyway, then really a major
Brilliant.
advantage. Yeah.
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 It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to your point as well, if the consumer is on their value journey, then it's if they're very early in that journey, then you have the ability to take them to that first 30 seconds, to get them to the next 5 minutes, and then to your Milgram's experiment. That makes a whole lot of difference, to be early on, to be that influencer, that educator, so that when they really get to that moment of truth, when they're about to buy, they can then you will be a preference for them.
So now let me take that plane that you're flying, guy, up here, right? Because I love where you're flying the plane. You know I love it, right? And so for anyone listening who is not as theoretical as Guy and I, and need this plane landed, so let me land the plane for you. You all ready for this?
Absolutely.
Let's land the plane. So here's what this looks like. So on your customer value journey, it starts off, there are 8 stages on the customer value journey, but it starts off with awareness. Okay. Then it goes to engagement, and then to subscribe. Okay. We also call that people getting to know you, like you, and then trust you. Know you, like you, and then trust you. Another way of looking at it. Okay. Those are the first 3 stages of your customer value journey. At the subscribe stage is where they come to your website and give you a piece of information that you can communicate back and forth with them. Email address, a phone number. They sign up for something. Okay. So follow me for a moment. As I land this plane, they see a YouTube short because they're on YouTube and shorts are just scrolling through. They see a YouTube short. Ooh, what's this? They consumed 30 seconds. They were aware. Okay. Then they click either in the description or the big button down below, and they go to the full video. Now they're watching your full 15, 10 minutes, 6 minute, whatever it is, longer than 30 seconds, minute, right? They're watching your full video. They watch that full video. They're engaging. They went from knowing you, now they're beginning to like you. As they're beginning to like you, and they're watching this video, in the video, if you follow our process, there's always a call to action. And you tell them, hey, I've got a link down below of a guide or a cheat sheet or something that you can go get that will help you. And they click that link, and they go to your website. They go to your website, they put in their name, their email address, and they hit submit. They've just subscribed. They've just gone from know, like, to trust. That's how it works.
Yeah, I like that, and you see that all over the place, and that know, like, trust is critical. I could talk to you for hours, and so our 30-second to our hour now, but anyway, we're going to have to close. But is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you want to mention before we close out?
Here's the deal. Video is here, it's here to stay. And you have a major opportunity right now because YouTube earlier this year published a study, and get these numbers. YouTube has said that 91% of your competition does not have a YouTube channel right now. 91% of your competition does not have a YouTube channel, which means they're not creating video. Which means even if you don't have a YouTube channel right now, you have an opportunity today to go start a channel, to go start creating video right now and get ahead of 91% of your competition. How else can you do that in your business and do it so inexpensively? I don't know any other way. Now,
Exactly.
if you need help with that, come talk to me. You can obviously go to clientattractionpros.com. If you want to come to me directly, meetatiba.com. That will take you to my LinkedIn page. Connect with me, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm here to talk to you.
Fantastic. No, and I like that. And yeah, and no question, if you get an expert like yourself, it makes so much of a difference to get it right, get it done fast, and then beat that other 91%, because you know, that being first in many areas can be a game changer for a business.
Absolutely, especially something as big as this.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, Atiba, thank you so much. I was so glad that we were able to set up this podcast and spend some time chatting together and really understanding what the whole market is doing, and then specifically as well how you can take advantage of that in search, which is so critical for that customer value journey. So, and you definitely helped to educate me, and I hope that our audience will also like what you've talked about. So where you can learn more information about Atiba is meetatiba.com. So I heard that one. And then, of course, clientattractionpros.com, clientattractionpros.com for learning more about this incredible new opportunity for businesses of all sizes. So whether you're small, medium, or large, search is where you want to be, video is where you want to be, and so clientattractionpros.com for Atiba. Otherwise, please stay tuned for many other videos in this series of the backstory on marketing. Please visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and download the first chapter of my book, and also learn about some other valuable excerpts from my book, The Post-COVID Marketing Machine. And also, don't forget to sign up for more episodes. And if you like this episode, please give it 5 stars and rate it for 5 stars. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Guy. And did y'all catch that? He just did know, like, and trust with y'all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.